Today I'm going to be showing you how to replace your inner and outer seals to your front axle of your T264 TYM tractor. Can be a little bit different than other tractors from your Kubotas and John Deeres. The reason I'm posting this video is because it's very limited on these tractors being new out there on the servicing and repairs of different items on this tractor. So the first thing you want to do, you want to go ahead and remove the outer cap and your gears to your wheel. You want to disconnect the bolt here where your steering capability is for your wheel. Also, before you take all that off, you want to come down here and you want to drain all your axle fluids. You can be able to locate in your owner's manual for servicing. During the takeoff of this whole unit on the outside of the axle to replace your inner seal, you got to remove the bottom cap. Only how you're able to remove this that I could find that's easy is I took a drill and lightly drilled into the cap where I could take a flathead screwdriver and pull it out. A lot of people say that you can just, knock a hole in it. I just feel more comfortable with drilling it because I have control of the drill and how far in it goes compared to a hammer and a flathead screwdriver knocking a hole in it. After you get the cap off, you have these snap rings. Actually have one right here, and you have like a metal ring that falls in behind it that help hold the bearing up, and the four-wheel drive, in which this one is four-wheel drive capability. The whole rod will come out with the bearings and all, which the bearing is made into the four-wheel drive. Also, you have another snap ring after this drops out up in the hub assembly, which you need to have a decent size of snap ring pliers to utilize to remove that upper snap ring. What I ended up doing is going to Lowe's and buying pretty much like a plier set snap ring assembly. Comes in a 4 in a pack, different types of pliers that came with it. About 30 bucks. That really did the job, made it easier for me to get the snap rings out. So pretty much I'm gonna go in with my snap ring pliers up into the cylinder here and remove the snap ring. Very simple, comes right out. You got another metal ring up in here. It gets a little aggravating. There it comes. Set it down. And pretty much the whole four-wheel drive assembly right here that goes up into the hub comes right out. And that's pretty much the bearing. The bearing's made into some of the four-wheel drive assembly. One thing you might want to take a note, I always like to put it back the way it came out. If you notice that, if you look at the four-wheel drive assembly, the rod here on one end looks a little bit different. It actually has another mark at the bottom. That makes me know that, or lets me know that that end is going to go down in here compared to the other end is going to go up into the shaft to make the four-wheel drive work. Now, I got to end up finding that snap ring up in here. And it's very aggravating because you can't hardly see. And actually, it's a different type of snap ring. Then we'll have to spread it apart. The oil from the axle does not help with taking this out at all. And it comes out just that easy. I make sure I separate my stuff so I know how it went. I'll set this back on the floor to dry so I know it went in that way. And pretty much I'm going to have to take out this bolt here, take the steering off. So I removed the steering from the hub assembly here. I'm going to take my rubber hammer and I'm going to hit on top of the hub assembly to allow it to drop. Just be mindful that this stuff is pretty heavy. Pretty simple. Also, the top of the hub assembly, we got bearings up here. Usually, when I take the hub assembly out, the bearing stays in and the seal comes with it. Now, usually I have to just knock the seal out, but this time it decided it wanted to stay onto the axle. So I brought the hub back outside to my work table. I got a little bit of light. You see, this is the top assembly. You still see the ring inside that I'm gonna have to pull out with my tool. It's a little hard to do it with holding the phone. Just snap ring out. And it comes out just like that. Lay it on the table. And the bearing might be a little aggravating to get out because I'm sure it's got some dirt and debris in it from every time where the seals gave out. So I just pretty much took my little tool and just pushed a little bit on the bearing and it fell right out. I'll set it to the side. Now I just got some part cleaner. I'm not going to show you the brand because they're not paying me to do this. But to clean the inside out, get the oil and the debris and all that out, it's best to have you some paper towels or work cloths. Work cloths probably the best. And just clean pretty much anywhere the oil's going to sit. All inside here, the top part, and especially the seals, or where the seal sits, the little rubber gasket. You want that clean as well. Now I pretty much got everything as clean as I'm gonna pretty much get it. So the seal I'm gonna be using is from TYM. I ended up going to a dealership here in North Carolina to pick this up. Smith Enterprises out of Salemburg, North Carolina. That's where I also purchased the tractor at. They've been very helpful on showing me the diagrams of this seal replacement. So pretty much what I'm going to do is work my way backwards the way I took it out. Now, since I have cleaned these bearings and everything, they might need a little bit of oil, which I would recommend what you're putting back in to your axle, because they can be a little bit tight to get in there. So like this one right here is going to probably need a little bit of oil just to push it down in there by hand. So this bearing that I was just talking about. I put a little bit of oil on it. It didn't want to go in by pushing it in, so what I suggest, and which I'm not a professional by any means of what I'm doing, I'm just learning as I go, just like anybody else does. I took me something that had no rough edges, in which I use a wrench or a ratchet. I put it on the bearing, worked my way around the bearing with a rubber hammer, and just lightly hit it where it would fall in place. You don't have to drive it in there because you don't want to mess up the bearings by any means. Them bearings are not cheap. Then I'm going to put the snap ring that goes into place back in where it needs to go. So I removed the seal and the bearing that goes in the hub out, which there is also another bearing, like I said, inside the hub assembly with a snap ring also. What I'm going to do is, before I put the new seal in, I'm going to make sure with some parts cleaner, I'm going to clean up the bearings real good, make sure there's no dirt that is inside the bearings. I'm going to take the other one out, clean it up, clean up the hub assembly, get all the dirt and oil that's caked up on the hub assembly off before I put it back together. The four-wheel drive also, it's going to be clean, the snap rings and all that. Also the axle, where it sits back up onto, it's got a lot of cake of oil and dirt and excess that needs to be taken off as well, so you don't get back into your bearings. Right here, it locks itself in place. You can see into the groove. Now if it doesn't do that, it's not in right, so you got to make sure it's in that groove to hold that bearing in place. So since I got that in place, I could go ahead and drop the next bearing down into place also, in which it probably needs a little bit of oil as well, and just repeat the process if it don't want to go in. If you have a large socket, that will work probably pretty good too. Okay, I got it back down in place. It's seated pretty well. It's flush. The bearing's back in place. It's flush pretty well. Now I can go ahead and put the seal into the hub. So I got the seal back in place. To make it flush with everything, I'm gonna take the rubber hammer, gently tap around it to get it to fit back into place. Don't have to hit it hard. But my goal is to make sure it's flush. Looks good to me. Now we can take the hub assembly back in and stick it back on the tractor. One thing I should mention, after you do clean where your hub comes back up on to your axle, you want the checks all the way around to make sure there's no hairline fracture or anything to your axle assembly. If you do have a hairline or some kind of nick into your axle, you might have to replace this assembly piece in which it unbolts to keep it from messing up your new seal and leaking again. So I put the hub back on, and you want it to sit up onto the axle. So what I do is I take a rubber mallet, make me a little room here, and I'll tap it gently up. I'll have to get a little bit different position. Until it seeps where it's all the way up where it needs to be, like it was before. It's hard for you to see. I'll show you in just a second. So pretty much I'm going to take my pliers. Yep, wrong ones. I'm gonna put this snap ring back into place. Maybe I had the right ones. Sometimes I get confused. Like I said, I ain't professional by no means. I'm just trying to save a little money. Not trying to have a mechanic bill. And it's back in place. Just that easy. It holds that hub from falling out. Just that one snap ring. We're gonna put the axle back in and put this ring and other snap ring back in place. So just to show you what the inside looks like, if it'll get a good enough video with a snap ring inside. But it's pretty much fell into that groove right there on that axle piece that slides into the hub. Alright, so I'm going to slide that four-wheel drive shaft back in with the bearing. I have plenty of room to play with. We'll go ahead and put that metal ring, that solid metal ring, back up in place. I'll find my pliers, the right ones. Squeeze that snap ring together. And wish and have a prayer that this thing goes back into place without this four-wheel drive shaft falling back out. Alright, I gotta bring it back down just a little bit, went too far. There we go. Let me show you what I just did. Everything's back in place. Apparently there's a little hair or something from my dog. Want to go up in there for some reason. So everything's back in place, in which I got a brand new cap where I had to demolish the other one, getting it off. And I'll put the new cap in, rubber hammer, tap it back into place, and then the inner seal's done. So this is the bottom cap from TYM, and it goes on the bottom. There's the old one that I had to knock a hole or drill a hole into to pull it out. So pretty much I'm gonna just take this out, stick it inside, just up under the hub, tap it in with a rubber hammer where it's flush, and I'll be done with that. So I put the cap back on. Well, that's what it's gonna look like after I get it flushed. It'll be there until you have to take it out the next time. So, putting outer seal in. Here's the part number for that. That's what it's going to look like. It about looks like the inner seal, but if you look, the difference, outer and then the inner, there is somewhat of a difference in size, so you'll be able to tell apart. Okay, so I'm going to take the bearing off. Everything's going to be clean before I put it back together and set it apart. One thing you'll have to be careful with is this little gasket. You want to check it, make sure there ain't no rips or tores or it dry rotted or anything like that. I'll wipe it off and put it back. I don't want to spray it and clean it because it'll probably mess it up. So right here, you got another snap ring holding the bearing in. I'm going to take that off real quick. The oil does not help me taking these off. Okay, got it off. Okay. I think there's another metal ring on there. So I got the bearing off. There was only a snap ring on that, no metal ring. So now I got to separate these two plates. I'm gonna use my rubber hammer, and I'm gonna try to get in here and hold it, which a vise might work a little bit better. And it comes right off like that. Then you got your seal right here, which I'm gonna have to do a little prying on that, probably with a flathead, just to break it loose to come sliding off. So I want that hard, the seal to pop off. You look at all this stuff that is wrapped around where the wheel is over this amount of time. I use this tractor almost about 3 days a week for my business. I'm gonna clean everything up real good. I'm gonna put the new seal on, clean the bearings, put it back together, and we'll be getting close to being done. So I cleaned it up, and I'm putting the seal back on, and I'm just pushing on it, and it should slide right on. I put a little oil on it also to help it. And it's on. So I told you wrong. It did have a metal ring on the bearing that goes behind the snap ring. I'm going to set this down into place and then put the snap ring back on. Got the snap ring. I'm gonna get the right tool again. Don't have the right tool. Spread it apart. Slide it back on in place. I'm gonna take a little wiggling. There it goes. I have to push it on there a little bit. I don't want to work sometimes. And it's back on. It's that easy. So, right there, that's the way it's reassembled. And then I'll set this back into place, just like that. And then I have a bearing that sits down on there. I might have to tap that sucker on a little bit with a rubber hammer. And it slides right on. Thank goodness for a rubber hammer, right? And while I'm looking at everything, I am checking the gears. Make sure there ain't no broke pieces or anything like that before it gets reassembled. Cleaning up the sides for the gasket. That's going to go back on. I'm going to do the same for the hub, and that's already back on the tractor. So you can see that rubber piece right there. It's got to fall in line right there. And then when it gets screwed back on, it'll push pressure against that to keep it from leaking. Now, if it's way too big, it's not fitting right, you're probably going to need another one because it's not going to seal properly. So when I put this back on, the teeth to the outer hub should fall into the four-wheel drive shaft. And when it does, it will be perfect against the inner hub. So what I'm pretty much going to do now, I'm going to sit here and go around and start screwing my screws in by hand. Like that, and just go all the way around doing the same. Also, I got a air gun. I got it cut down low so I don't strip anything when I do tighten these up, because I don't want to put too much pressure on it. And then I'll go back and just kind of use a hand ratchet and just verify that it is tight enough to hold the liquid in. So I tightened up the outer hub, checked everything. I put the steering back on to the hub. I gotta tighten this up a little bit with a ratchet. But other than that, we'll be ready for oil. So I'm gonna grab the snap ring and set it back into the groove that it's supposed to go in, and it locks itself in place. Let me show you.